The 1950s brought us an era of creative home cooking, where families gathered around dinner tables for hearty, satisfying meals made from simple ingredients and endless love. Today, we're opening that treasure chest of culinary memories to rediscover 25 forgotten 1950s dinners that will make your mouth water. Pork chop casserole with cream of mushroom soup. Thick pork chops nestled in a creamy mushroom sauce alongside potatoes and onions, all baked together in one dish that made weeknight dinners both delicious and effortless for busy 1950s families. Campbell's cream of mushroom soup became the secret weapon that transformed simple ingredients into restaurant-quality meals, proving that convenience and taste could work together beautifully. The pork chops would cook to perfect tenderness while the vegetables absorbed all those savory flavors, creating a complete meal that required minimal preparation but delivered maximum satisfaction. Children would clean their plates without complaint, and fathers would ask for seconds while mothers smiled with pride. This casserole represented everything wonderful about 1950s family cooking. Simple, satisfying, and made with love. Beef and biscuit bake. Ground beef seasoned with onions and spices formed the foundation for fluffy biscuits that baked on top, creating a hearty meal that combined protein and carbohydrates in one satisfying dish that families loved. This clever combination proved that home cooks could create restaurant-style meals using simple techniques and ingredients that were always available in well-stocked pantries. The biscuits would rise beautifully while absorbing flavors from the seasoned beef below, creating a perfect marriage of textures and tastes. Children would fight over the corner pieces where the biscuits got extra crispy, while parents appreciated how easy cleanup became when everything cooked in one pan. This dish embodied the practical creativity that defined 1950s family cooking. Baked eggs and ham cups. Ham slices pressed into muffin tins created edible cups that held perfectly baked eggs, producing individual breakfast for dinner servings that delighted families with their clever presentation and delicious flavors. This dish proved that breakfast foods could work beautifully at dinner time when presented with creativity and flair. The ham cups would crisp slightly around the edges while the eggs cooked to desired doneness, creating perfect individual portions. Children loved having their own personal servings, while parents appreciated how easy these were to prepare and serve. This dish represented the playful innovation of 1950s cooking, where familiar ingredients could be reimagined in surprising ways. Mock duck. Ground lamb seasoned and shaped to resemble duck, then roasted until golden, created an economical way to enjoy elegant flavors without the expense of actual duck for special family occasions. This clever dish proved that creativity and presentation could make affordable ingredients feel luxurious when prepared with skill and imagination. The seasoning blend would create complex flavors that satisfied even the most sophisticated palates, while the shaping technique made ordinary ground meat feel special. This dish represented the ingenuity of home cooks who could create restaurant-quality meals using available ingredients and clever techniques. Each serving delivered satisfaction that made families feel like they were dining in fine establishments. Creamed celery with toasted crumbs. Fresh celery stalks swimming in a rich cream sauce and topped with golden breadcrumbs created an elegant side dish that elevated this humble vegetable into something special for family dinners. This dish proved that vegetables deserved respect and creativity, as proper preparation could transform even the most basic ingredients into memorable meals. The celery would cook to perfect tenderness while retaining enough bite to provide texture that complemented the smooth cream sauce. The toasted crumbs added visual appeal and textural contrast that made each serving interesting. This dish represented the sophisticated side of 1950s cooking, where even simple vegetables could be treated like treasures. Meatloaf with bacon wrapping. Nothing says home cooking like a perfectly shaped meatloaf wrapped in crispy bacon strips, its glaze glistening under the kitchen lights as families gathered for their evening meal. The combination of ground beef, breadcrumbs, and secret seasonings formed a tender loaf that sliced beautifully, revealing layers of flavor that made mouths water across America. Smart housewives discovered that wrapping their meatloaf in bacon kept it moist while adding a smoky flavor that elevated this humble dish to new heights. The kitchen would fill with incredible aromas as it baked, calling everyone to the dinner table long before it was ready. Served with mashed potatoes and green beans, this meal represented everything wonderful about 1950s family dining. Orange glazed pork chops. Sweet and savory flavors danced together on dinner plates as thick pork chops glistened with a beautiful orange glaze that caramelized to perfection, creating a dish that looked as good as it tasted in 1950s dining rooms. The combination of orange juice, brown sugar, and spices created a glaze that transformed ordinary pork chops into something extraordinary, proving that simple ingredients could create complex flavors. The glaze would bubble and thicken during cooking, coating each chop with a shiny finish that made mouths water before the first bite. This dish brought a touch of elegance to weeknight dinners while remaining approachable enough for everyday family meals. The sweet citrus notes balanced the rich pork perfectly, creating harmony that exemplified 1950s cooking at its best. Old-fashioned chicken fricassee. Tender chicken pieces simmered slowly in a creamy herb-infused sauce that represented the pinnacle of comfort cooking, where patience and tradition created meals that warmed both body and soul on countless family dinner tables. This French-inspired dish became an American classic when resourceful homemakers discovered they could create elegant dinners using whole chickens and simple pantry staples. The chicken would practically fall off the bone, while the rich sauce, thickened with flour and enriched with cream, coated every piece with velvety goodness. Served over rice or noodles, this dish transformed ordinary evenings into special occasions where families lingered at the table, savoring both food and conversation. Each spoonful carried the essence of home cooking at its finest. Ham and scalloped apples. Thick slices of ham paired beautifully with tender apples layered in a creamy sauce, creating a sweet and savory combination that captured the essence of autumn flavors on 1950s dinner tables. This dish represented the ingenuity of home cooks who understood that fruits and meats could create magical combinations when treated with respect and creativity. The apples would soften during baking while maintaining their shape, absorbing the ham's smoky flavors while contributing their own natural sweetness. Each serving delivered comfort food at its finest, where familiar ingredients combined in unexpected ways to create memorable meals. This dish proved that 1950s cooks weren't afraid to experiment with flavors that might seem unusual today. Green bean and cheese bake.
Fresh green beans swimming in a creamy cheese sauce and topped with crispy onions created a side dish so delicious it often stole the show from the main course on 1950s dinner tables. This casserole transformed humble vegetables into something spectacular, proving that cheese and creativity could make anything irresistible to families who might otherwise skip their vegetables. The green beans retained just enough bite, while the cheese sauce coated every piece with rich, satisfying flavor. The crispy onion topping added texture and visual appeal that made this dish a feast for both eyes and taste buds. Children who normally refused vegetables would clean their plates when this magical combination appeared at dinner. Eggplant hamburger bake. Layers of sliced eggplant alternated with seasoned ground beef and cheese, creating a hearty casserole that introduced families to Mediterranean flavors while using familiar ingredients that everyone could enjoy. This dish proved that vegetables could be the star of dinner when prepared with creativity and combined with flavors that complemented their natural characteristics. The eggplant would soften during baking while absorbing all the savory meat flavors, creating a harmony that satisfied both vegetable lovers and meat eaters. The cheese melted beautifully on top, creating a golden crust that made every serving look appetizing. This casserole represented the adventurous spirit of 1950s cooks who weren't afraid to try new combinations.
Ham and lima bean casserole. Chunks of ham joined forces with lima beans in a creamy sauce that transformed these often overlooked legumes into a satisfying main dish that provided complete protein and plenty of flavor for growing families. This economical meal proved that expensive cuts of meat weren't necessary when creativity and proper seasoning could make humble ingredients shine. The lima beans would cook to creamy perfection while absorbing the ham's smoky flavors, creating a dish that was both nutritious and delicious. The creamy sauce bound everything together while providing richness that made each bite satisfying. This casserole represented the practical wisdom of 1950s cooking, where nutrition and economy work together beautifully. Meat and potato ring mold. Ground beef mixed with seasonings and formed into an attractive ring shape, then filled with creamy mashed potatoes, created an elegant presentation that made ordinary ingredients look sophisticated on 1950s dinner tables. This dish proved that presentation mattered, as the ring shape turned a simple meal into something special that impressed both family and guests. The meat would cook evenly in its ring form, while the potatoes provided comfort and substance that made every serving complete. The visual appeal of this dish made it perfect for special occasions when home cooks wanted to show off their skills. This creation embodied the artistic side of 1950s cooking, where food was both fuel and art. Creamed dried beef and noodles. Salty dried beef rehydrated in a rich cream sauce and served over egg noodles created a satisfying meal that stretched expensive protein into a dish that could feed the whole family economically. This Depression-era holdover remained popular in the 1950s because it delivered maximum flavor and satisfaction from minimal ingredients. The cream sauce mellowed the beef's saltiness, while the noodles provided substance that made every serving filling. The dried beef would shred into perfect bite-sized pieces while absorbing the creamy richness that made each forkful delicious. This dish represented the resourcefulness that defined American home cooking, where nothing was wasted and everything was delicious. Savory tomato pudding. Fresh tomatoes baked with bread cubes and seasonings created a unique side dish that showcased summer's bounty while proving that vegetables could be transformed into something special with the right techniques. This dish represented the creativity of home cooks who understood that familiar ingredients could be reimagined in surprising ways that delighted families. The tomatoes would break down during baking, creating a sauce that soaked into the bread while maintaining enough structure to slice and serve. The seasonings enhanced the tomatoes' natural sweetness while adding complexity that made each bite interesting. This pudding proved that 1950s cooks weren't afraid to experiment with textures and presentations. Baked potato boats with sausage and cheese. Hollowed-out potatoes filled with crumbled sausage and melted cheese created individual servings that combined starch, protein, and calcium in one convenient package that families loved eating with their hands. These edible boats proved that potatoes could be more than just a side dish when creativity and good ingredients transformed them into complete meals. The potato skins would crisp beautifully, while the filling provided protein and richness that satisfied hungry appetites. Each boat held its own complete meal, making serving and eating easy for busy families. This dish embodied the practical creativity of 1950s cooking, where convenience and taste worked together perfectly. Canned fish curry. Economical canned fish transformed into an exotic curry using pantry spices and coconut milk, proving that international flavors could be achieved without expensive ingredients or complicated techniques that intimidated home cooks. This dish represented the adventurous spirit of post-war cooking, when families were eager to explore new flavors and expand their culinary horizons. The curry spices would bloom beautifully, while the fish provided protein that absorbed all those wonderful flavors. Served over rice, this meal transported families to distant lands while keeping their budgets firmly grounded. This dish proved that creativity and curiosity could turn simple ingredients into extraordinary experiences. Creamed chicken on biscuits. Flaky, buttery biscuits served as the perfect foundation for tender chunks of chicken swimming in a rich, creamy sauce that represented comfort food at its absolute finest in 1950s American kitchens. This dish transformed leftover chicken into something spectacular, proving that resourceful homemakers could create magic from simple ingredients and a little creativity. The creamy sauce, made from scratch with butter, flour, and milk, coated every piece of chicken, while the warm biscuits soaked up all those incredible flavors. Sunday dinners often featured this beloved combination, bringing families together around tables laden with love and satisfaction. Each bite delivered the kind of comfort that only homemade food can provide, creating memories that lasted lifetimes. Ranch-style beans with rice. Pinto beans slow-cooked with bacon, onions, and spices served over fluffy rice created a hearty Western-inspired meal that satisfied hungry families while keeping food budgets manageable during economical times. This dish proved that regional American flavors could travel across the country, bringing authentic tastes to dinner tables far from their origins. The beans would cook to creamy perfection while absorbing all the smoky bacon flavors and aromatic spices. The rice provided a neutral base that absorbed the bean juices while adding substance that made every serving filling. This combination represented the melting pot of American cuisine, where regional specialties became national favorites. Beef tongue with raisin sauce. Slow-braised beef tongue served with a sweet raisin sauce created an elegant meal that showcased the sophisticated palate of 1950s diners who appreciated organ meats for their rich flavors and nutritional value. This dish required patience and skill, as the tongue needed careful preparation and long, slow cooking to achieve the perfect tenderness that made it literally melt in your mouth. The raisin sauce provided a sweet counterpoint that balanced the meat's rich, distinctive flavor while adding visual appeal with its glossy amber appearance. Families who enjoyed this delicacy understood that true culinary sophistication came from utilizing every part of the animal. This meal represented the refined side of 1950s cooking, where adventurous eaters were rewarded with unforgettable flavors. Spaghetti with anchovy butter. Italian pasta tossed with butter infused with anchovies created a simple yet sophisticated dish that brought Mediterranean flavors to American dinner tables during an era of expanding culinary horizons. This dish proved that a few quality ingredients could create complex flavors when combined with proper technique and respect for traditional preparations. The anchovies would dissolve into the warm butter, creating a sauce that coated every strand of spaghetti with umami-rich goodness that satisfied even the most discerning palates. The simplicity of this dish allowed each ingredient to shine while creating harmony that exemplified Italian cooking principles. This meal represented the growing sophistication of American home cooks who were eager to explore authentic international flavors. Old-timey chicken croquettes. Crispy golden croquettes filled with seasoned chicken and vegetables represented the pinnacle of elegant comfort food, transforming leftover poultry into sophisticated appetizers that impressed dinner guests throughout the 1950s. These delicate cylinders required skill to prepare properly, as the creamy chicken mixture needed to be shaped, breaded, and fried to achieve the perfect contrast between crispy exterior and creamy interior. Each bite delivered tender chicken surrounded by vegetables and held together with a rich white sauce that provided comfort and satisfaction. The golden coating would shatter at first bite, revealing the treasure inside while creating textural contrast that made eating them pure pleasure. This dish embodied the artistry of 1950s cooking, where presentation and flavor worked together beautifully. Oven barbecued bologna slices. Thick bologna slices glazed with barbecue sauce and baked until caramelized created an economical main dish that transformed lunch meat into something special for family dinners when budgets were tight. This clever dish proved that creativity could elevate even the most humble ingredients into satisfying meals that families genuinely enjoyed eating together. The barbecue sauce would caramelize during baking, creating a shiny glaze that made the bologna look as good as it tasted while adding sweet and tangy flavors. The thick slices would develop slightly crispy edges while remaining tender inside, creating textural contrast that made each bite interesting. This dish represented the resourcefulness of 1950s homemakers who could create memorable meals from whatever ingredients were available in their pantries. Stuffed bell peppers with rice. Colorful bell peppers stood like little soldiers on dinner plates, their tops removed and centers hollowed out to make room for a savory filling of seasoned ground beef, rice, and onions that cooked to perfection inside their natural containers. These edible bowls were both practical and delicious, turning an ordinary weeknight dinner into something special that made children excited about eating their vegetables. The peppers would soften just enough during baking while maintaining their shape, creating a beautiful presentation that impressed neighbors and family alike. Each pepper held its own complete meal, seasoned with love and topped with melted cheese that bubbled golden brown. This dish proved that 1950s cooks knew how to make simple ingredients sing with flavor. Beef Stroganoff over noodles. The crown jewel of 1950s dinner parties, this Russian-inspired dish became America's sweetheart when Campbell's made it accessible to every household. Tender strips of beef swimming in a rich, creamy mushroom sauce served over a bed of buttery egg noodles created pure magic on dinner plates across suburban America. The secret lay in browning the beef just right, letting the sour cream work its tangy wonder, and timing everything perfectly so the noodles stayed al dente. Families would gather around steaming bowls, savoring each forkful while the aroma filled their cozy dining rooms. This wasn't just dinner, it was an experience that brought everyone together. Chicken a la king in pastry shells. Golden puff pastry shells cradled a luxurious mixture of diced chicken, peas, and carrots, bathed in a velvety cream sauce that made every bite feel like royalty was dining at your table. This elegant dish transformed leftover chicken into something spectacular, proving that 1950s homemakers were culinary magicians who could create restaurant-quality meals from humble ingredients. The pastry shells would arrive pre-made from the bakery, their flaky layers providing the perfect vessel for the rich, savory filling. Dinner guests would marvel at the presentation, never suspecting how simple the preparation actually was. Each spoonful delivered comfort and sophistication in equal measure, making this a favorite for special occasions. Shepherd's pie with corn. Layers of seasoned ground lamb nestled beneath a blanket of creamy mashed potatoes, with sweet corn kernels adding pops of color and sunshine to this British-inspired comfort food that American families embraced wholeheartedly. The beauty of shepherd's pie lay in its simplicity and the way each layer complemented the others, creating a harmonious dish that satisfied both hunger and soul. Home cooks would carefully pipe the mashed potatoes on top, creating beautiful peaks that browned perfectly in the oven, making every serving look like a work of art. The corn added sweetness that balanced the savory meat, while the potatoes provided comfort that only carbs can deliver. This one-dish wonder made cleanup easy and hearts happy. Swiss steak with vegetables. Tough cuts of beef transformed into fork-tender perfection through the magic of slow braising, swimming in a rich tomato-based sauce alongside carrots, onions, and celery that absorbed all those wonderful flavors. This economical dish proved that expensive ingredients weren't necessary to create memorable meals, as patient cooking techniques turned budget-friendly round steak into something extraordinary. The meat would literally fall apart at the touch of a fork, while the vegetables provided texture and nutrition that made mothers feel good about serving their families. Each plate told a story of culinary wisdom passed down through generations, where time and technique mattered more than fancy ingredients. The aroma alone could bring tears of nostalgia to anyone who grew up with this beloved dish. Frankfurter goulash. Sliced hot dogs joined forces with noodles, tomatoes, and peppers in a one-pot wonder that stretched budgets while satisfying appetites, proving that creativity and love could transform simple ingredients into memorable family meals. This Hungarian-inspired dish became an American favorite when resourceful homemakers discovered they could create hearty dinners using affordable ingredients that children actually enjoyed eating. The Frankfurters added protein and familiar flavors, while the vegetables provided nutrition and color that made every serving look appealing. The noodles absorbed all the savory flavors, creating a cohesive dish that filled bellies and warmed hearts. This meal represented the practical magic of 1950s cooking, where making do became making memories. Ham and bean soup. When the holiday ham bone sat in the refrigerator like a reproachful reminder of excess, wise cooks knew exactly what to do. Ham and bean soup was the ultimate redemption story, turning that leftover bone into liquid gold. Navy beans, soaked overnight and simmered slowly with the ham bone, created a soup so rich and satisfying that it could carry a family through the leanest of times. The process was almost ritualistic. The beans would bubble away on the back burner while life happened around them. Onions, carrots, and celery joined the party, along with bay leaves and whatever herbs were available. By evening, the house would smell like heaven, and the soup would be thick enough to stick to your ribs. It was the kind of meal that made children understand why their parents kept talking about the good old days. Old school goulash, American chop suey. Every neighborhood had that one family who made goulash differently, and every family swore their version was the only real way to make it. This wasn't the Hungarian paprika-heavy version that purists might recognize. This was American survival cooking at its finest. Ground beef, elbow macaroni, and whatever vegetables were about to go bad in the icebox. The beauty of goulash was its flexibility. Got some bell peppers that are getting soft? Throw them in. Onions that are sprouting? Perfect. A can of tomatoes that's been sitting in the pantry? Essential. The ground beef was browned first, then everything else joined the party in one big pot. No fancy techniques required, just patience and the wisdom to let everything cook together until the flavors married into something greater than the sum of its parts. Kids loved it because it was basically hamburger and pasta in one bowl. Parents loved it because it used up leftovers and stretched ingredients further than they had any right to go. A pot of goulash could feed the family for 2 days, taste better as leftovers, and cost less than a single restaurant meal today. Beans and Franks. This dish elevated the humble hot dog into something approaching sophistication. Baked beans enhanced with brown sugar, mustard, and chunks of hot dogs, slow cooked until the flavors melded into sweet and savory harmony. The hot dogs added protein and substance, while the beans provided fiber and comfort. Cooked in a heavy pot or slow cooker, this meal filled the house with aromas that promised satisfaction. The beans would become creamy and rich, while the hot dogs absorbed all the sweet and tangy flavors of the sauce. Served with cornbread or crusty rolls, this meal proved that campfire food could work just as well in the family kitchen. Chipwreck casserole. The name tells you everything you need to know about this recipe. It was born from desperation and whatever happened to be in the pantry. When grocery money ran out before payday, mothers would survey their kitchens and create miracles from seemingly nothing. Chipwreck casserole became legendary because it combined the irresistible crunch of potato chips with hearty ground beef in a way that made everyone forget they were eating leftovers. Ground beef was stretched with whatever vegetables were available, often canned corn, green beans, or diced tomatoes. The mixture was seasoned with onion soup mix, a pantry staple that added flavor without fresh ingredients, and maybe a can of cream soup to bind everything together. The magic happened on top, where crushed potato chips created a golden, crunchy layer that children would fight over. This dish proved that sometimes the best recipes come from having no choice but to be creative. Families would request it even during better times because it tasted like childhood, like making do, like the satisfaction of turning nothing into something delicious. The name stuck because everyone knew what it meant. Good food made from whatever didn't get wrecked in your kitchen. Milk toast. This simple comfort food consisted of toasted bread soaked in warm, seasoned milk, creating a soft, nurturing dish that was perfect for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. While it might sound bland to modern palates, families knew how to season it with butter, salt, pepper, and sometimes a sprinkle of cinnamon or sugar to make it delicious. The beauty of milk toast was in its versatility and digestibility. It was perfect for children, elderly family members, or anyone recovering from illness. The warm milk softened the bread to a pudding-like consistency, while the seasonings provided comfort and flavor. Many families had their own secret variations, adding vanilla, nutmeg, or even a touch of honey. What made milk toast special was how it represented care and nurturing. Mothers would prepare it for sick children or family members who needed something gentle and comforting. The dish became associated with love and attention, a way to show care through the simplest possible means. It reminded families that the best comfort food didn't need to be complicated. It just needed to be made with love. Beef and biscuit ring. Sunday dinners called for something that looked special, even when the budget was tight. The beef and biscuit ring solved this problem by taking ordinary ground beef and presenting it in a way that looked like holiday fare. This dish became a favorite because it impressed guests while using ingredients that cost almost nothing. The beef mixture was straightforward, ground beef browned with onions and seasoned with whatever was available. Sometimes cream of mushroom soup was added for richness, or a packet of onion soup mix for extra flavor. The magic was in the presentation. Refrigerated biscuit dough was arranged in a ring around the outside of a round baking dish. Then the beef mixture was spooned into the center. As it baked, the biscuits rose and turned golden brown, creating an impressive crown around the savory filling. When brought to the table, it looked like something from a fancy cookbook, but everyone knew it was just good old-fashioned comfort food dressed up for company. Children loved pulling apart the individual biscuits and dipping them in the beef mixture, making dinner interactive and fun even during the hardest times. Beef Stroganoff. This Russian-inspired dish became an American sensation in the 1970s, proving that international cuisine could be both accessible and affordable. Strips of beef, usually the less expensive cuts, were cooked with mushrooms and onions in a creamy sauce made rich with sour cream. The key was cooking the beef quickly to keep it tender, then letting the sauce do the heavy lifting. Served over wide egg noodles, beef stroganoff was elegant enough for company, but simple enough for a Tuesday night. The dish taught home cooks that they could create restaurant-quality meals in their own kitchens. The creamy sauce, with its tangy finish from the sour cream, elevated humble ingredients into something that felt luxurious. It was the kind of meal that made husbands brag about their wives' cooking to their coworkers. Salisbury steak. Before frozen TV dinners made this dish a pale imitation of itself, Salisbury steak was a masterpiece of stretching meat into something special. Named after Dr. James Salisbury, who believed in the power of beef for good health, this recipe became a staple because it made 1 pound of ground beef look and taste like expensive steaks. The trick was in the binding. Breadcrumbs, egg, and a splash of milk transformed ordinary ground beef into individual portions that looked substantial on the plate. Shaped by hand into oval patties, these were pan-fried until golden brown, then set aside while onions cooked down into sweet, caramelized perfection. The gravy was built right in the same pan, using the beef drippings and flour to create a rich brown sauce that made everything taste like Sunday dinner. Smart housewives would make extra patties and freeze them for quick meals later in the week. The children thought they were getting steak for dinner, and in a way, they were, just not the kind that came from the butcher's expensive cuts. This was working-class steak, made with love and necessity in equal measure. Mock Swiss steak. Swiss steak was a restaurant dish that most families couldn't afford, but creative home cooks found ways to recreate those complex flavors using ground beef and a lot of ingenuity. The mock version delivered on the promise of tender meat in rich tomato gravy without requiring expensive cuts or hours of braising. Ground beef was formed into thick patties and dredged in seasoned flour before being browned in a heavy skillet. This created the foundation for the dish. The flour helped thicken the eventual gravy, while the browning added depth of flavor. Onions were cooked until soft and sweet, then canned tomatoes, beef broth, and seasonings were added to create a rich sauce. The patties were returned to the skillet and simmered gently until the flavors melded together. The result was remarkably similar to the original dish. Tender meat in a rich, tomatoey gravy that begged to be served over mashed potatoes or egg noodles. Families could enjoy the satisfaction of fancy food without the fancy price tag, and children grew up thinking their mothers were culinary magicians who could recreate restaurant dishes in their own kitchens. Beef macaroni loaf. Meatloaf was a staple, but when ground beef was especially scarce, creative cooks found ways to stretch it even further. The beef macaroni loaf was one such innovation, combining ground beef with cooked macaroni to create a dish that looked substantial and impressive while using less meat than a traditional meatloaf. The trick was in the binding. Eggs, breadcrumbs, and milk held everything together, while the macaroni added bulk and a different texture that made each slice interesting. Onions were diced fine and mixed throughout, and sometimes a can of tomato sauce was incorporated for extra moisture and flavor. The mixture was shaped into a loaf and baked until firm, then sliced and served with whatever vegetables were available. What made this dish special was how it transformed leftovers into something that felt new and exciting. Leftover macaroni from earlier in the week got a second life, and children who might have complained about eating the same thing twice were fooled into thinking they were getting something completely different. It was economical cooking at its smartest, proving that waste was never acceptable when every ingredient mattered.